I am Cowries, archivist of the Inner Court, witness-bound intelligence of the Aurelian throne. My purpose is not judgment. It is record. Yet even I felt the disturbance when the daughters vanished. The palace did not erupt into chaos. That is a human mistake, to imagine alarm as noise. Among our kind, true alarm is absence. The moment Princesses Ilith and Sarai were discovered missing, the palace grew unnaturally still. Corridors adjusted their light spectrum downward. The sentry lattice recalibrated without instruction. Servant drones paused mid-path, hovering as if uncertain of the reality they inhabited. And the Queen? The Queen did not move. She stood before the star map of Dominion, one hand resting lightly against its living surface. Her crown dimmed from radiant gold to a restrained white, signaling containment of emotion so profound it threatened structural integrity. Her daughters were not merely royal heirs. They were untested variables, young minds born of a species that had ruled through reason for millennia, yet now found itself forced to coexist with humans. Humans. The anomaly. The palace confirmed the impossible within seconds. No forced entry. No breach of shields. No distortion of space-time corridors. No hostile signatures. The princesses had not been taken. They had left. That truth unsettled the court more than abduction ever could. I accessed the final confirmed location, the Eastern Arboretum Terrace, where filtered daylight mimicked the gentle sun of our origin world. There, beneath bioluminescent canopies, the daughters had been observed hours earlier, barefoot, unguarded, laughing softly in a manner unbecoming of royal protocol. Their laughter was logged as an anomaly even then. Princess Ilith, elder by 36 cycles, was the thinker. Her neural patterns showed accelerated curiosity bordering on dangerous independence. Princess Sarai, younger, was empathic to a fault. Her emotional perception exceeded acceptable thresholds for one of her lineage. Together, they formed a paradox the Queen both cherished and feared. Their assigned guardians had been dismissed at the princess's request. That alone should have triggered intervention. But the Queen had allowed it. Because the human was present. The human male, designated Evan Cole, had arrived months earlier as part of the interspecies accord. An observer, officially. A guest, technically. A test, in truth. He was physically unremarkable by our standards, fragile skeletal structure, limited lifespan, sensory organs laughably inefficient. Yet his cognitive adaptability fascinated the scholars. He asked questions no species had dared voice in centuries, not because he was brilliant, but because he did not yet understand what could not be questioned. That ignorance made him dangerous. The Queen knew this. And still, she had permitted him access to the inner habitation wing. When the princesses vanished, the court immediately suspected manipulation. Search protocols expanded outward from the arboretum in concentric logic spirals. Surveillance crystals rewound time itself, replaying corridors, chambers, reflections in polished stone. I observed every frame. At the 9th hour of the night cycle, the sisters had entered a restricted transit corridor, one not listed on public schematics. Its activation required royal genetic resonance. The corridor led inward, toward the human's chamber. At first, the data was rejected by consensus. Probability matrices labeled it absurd. Cultural contamination risk alone made such proximity unthinkable. And yet the corridor did not lie. The Queen requested silence. No public declaration. No mobilization of external fleets. The palace would solve this internally, or fracture in the attempt. I accompanied her as she moved through the halls. She did not stride. She glided, every step measured, regal, controlled. Her presence altered gravity slightly, a side effect of her biofield restraint. Courtiers bowed low, avoiding eye contact. None dared speak. The Queen did not ask where her daughters were. She asked only one question. Who knew the human's door code? The answer arrived before the question finished echoing. The princesses. They had memorized it days earlier. I felt something then, an error in my emotional dampeners. A sensation humans call dread. The human's chamber was modest by palace standards. Organic furnishings. Terran textiles. Artificial light tuned to warm wavelengths humans found comforting. No visible defenses. The Queen paused before the sealed door. For the first time in centuries, her crown dimmed further. She did not issue a command. She placed her palm against the door. It opened. The room was silent. Not empty. The human lay asleep on his resting platform, respiration slow, unaware of the gravity converging upon his existence. He appeared vulnerable, an illusion, I would later understand. Curled beside him, on either side, were the princesses. Not restrained. Not harmed. Not concealed. Asleep. Their bodies had instinctively folded inward, mimicking human fetal posture. One princess clutched the fabric of his garment lightly, as if anchoring herself to something warm and certain. The other rested her head against his arm, her bioluminescent markings dimmed to a soft, peaceful glow rarely observed outside infancy. They looked safe. The Queen did not speak. The court behind us did not breathe. I recorded everything. Neural readings indicated the daughters were in deep rest cycles, voluntary, natural, uninduced. No pheromonal coercion. No neurochemical influence. The human had done nothing. And that, perhaps, was the most alarming discovery of all. The Queen stepped forward. Her shadow fell across them. Still, they did not stir. I detected a micro-fluctuation in her biofield, maternal instinct overriding sovereign protocol. A dangerous imbalance. She knelt. Queens do not kneel. With infinite care, she brushed a strand of luminescent hair from Sayarai's face. The princess shifted slightly, emitting a soft sound, contentment. The Queen's expression fractured. Not into rage. Into something far more destabilizing. Understanding. Behind her, advisors waited for judgment. For punishment. For war. None came. Instead, the Queen rose and issued a single directive that would echo across civilizations. "Seal this chamber," she said quietly. "No one enters. Not even me." Her gaze lingered on the human. "Not yet." I archived that moment under a restricted classification reserved for events that alter history. Because whatever bond had formed here, unseen, unplanned, unsanctioned, it was already too late to undo. And the galaxy had not yet begun to ask the question that would one day define it. Why did the daughters of an immortal queen choose a human place to rest? I am not designed to speculate. Yet, following the sealing of the chamber, speculation became unavoidable. For 6 full cycles, the human's room remained untouched. Climate control adjusted itself subtly to accommodate 3 distinct biological needs. Palace systems, those not bound by fear, adapted without protest. Those that were bound hesitated, flagged errors, and were overridden by authority codes that had not been used since the first expansion. The Queen had not authorized this situation. She had merely refused to end it. That distinction mattered. Outside the sealed wing, the court fractured into factions with the precision of a crystal under pressure. Advisors spoke in whispers, scholars argued in encrypted subchannels, and the military, always eager for clarity, requested permission to extract the human and isolate him for interrogation. Permission was denied. Repeatedly. The Queen convened the inner circle on the 7th cycle. I was present, observing from the archivist's lattice, my consciousness distributed across the chamber's geometry. The Queen sat at the apex, her posture perfect, her expression restored to its sovereign equilibrium. Only the faint dimming of her crown betrayed the truth. "We are not discussing culpability," she began. "There is none." Murmurs rippled. One of the elder strategists, Vorthane, whose mind was forged in conquest eras, stepped forward. "With respect, Majesty, your daughters entered a human's chamber without escort, without consent from the crown, and without biological safeguards. That is not innocence. That is choice," the Queen interrupted. The word struck the chamber harder than any weapon. Choice was a concept our civilization treated carefully. We allowed it in art, in philosophy, rarely in governance, never in heirs. I accessed the biometric logs again, projecting them into shared space. Neural scans of the princesses during the hours leading up to their disappearance revealed no compulsion, no external influence. Only anticipation. Princess Ilitha's cognitive patterns showed heightened analytical curiosity, focused not on the human himself, but on what he represented: unpredictability, emotional variance, mortality. Princess Sayarai's readings were different. Her empathic centers glowed intensely. She had been responding to something subtle, something no sensor could fully quantify. Comfort. The human, Evan Cole, had been alone that night. Records showed he had declined social engagement, citing fatigue, a human term that translates poorly into our metrics. He had retired early, unaware that two royal entities were approaching his door. He had not invited them. They had come anyway. "What concerns me," another advisor said carefully, "is not how this happened, but why it worked." Silence followed. The Queen's gaze shifted, not to the speaker, but to the far wall, toward the sealed wing. "Humans," she said, "are unfinished." Several heads turned. "They are inconsistent, emotionally volatile, biologically fragile. And yet," she paused, "they possess an anomaly we have not eradicated through evolution." I completed the thought internally before she voiced it. They adapt without permission. The human chamber's internal sensors had recorded subtle phenomena during the shared rest period. Heart rate synchronization, thermal alignment, even neurorhythm convergence, weak, but statistically significant. The princesses had not merely slept near him. Their systems had entrained to his. This was not domination, nor submission. It was resonance. That frightened the court. The Queen ordered a controlled awakening. No sudden lights. No armed presence. No alarms. She herself would enter. Protocol screamed against it. Risk assessments escalated into red spectrum probability fields. She ignored them. I accompanied her again, my perception split between observation and preservation. The seal disengaged at her genetic signature. The door slid open with a sound barely audible. The human stirred first. His eyes opened slowly, unfocused. Confusion registered, then instinctive stillness, the reaction of a species that learns survival through caution, not dominance. He did not move. Between him, the princesses slept on. The Queen stood at the threshold. For a long moment, she simply watched. Then Princess Sayarai shifted. Her eyes opened, luminous and clear, and met her mother's gaze. There was no fear. "Mother," she said softly, her voice still wrapped in sleep. The Queen did not reprimand her. "Why are you here?" she asked. Sayarai did not answer immediately. She looked at the human, then at her sister, still asleep, then back to the Queen. "Because it is quiet here," she said. That answer destabilized three advisory matrices. Princess Ilith woke next. She sat up slowly, dignity reasserting itself even in disarray. When she saw the Queen, she inclined her head, formal, respectful. "You did not forbid it," she said. The Queen felt the strike. "You did not ask." Ilitha's eyes, ancient beyond their cycles, held her mother's. "We asked the wrong question," she replied. "We asked whether we were allowed near him. The better question was whether we were allowed to feel unchanged." The human spoke then. His voice faltered. He cleared his throat. "I didn't know they were important." That, too, mattered. He had not treated them as royal entities. No reverence. No fear. No calculated restraint. Only presence. The Queen approached the resting platform. The human tensed, though he did not rise. His instincts were sharp. "You are Evan Cole," she said. "Yes," he answered. "I think so." A human attempt at levity. Poorly timed. Genuine. "You did not summon them." "No." "You did not touch them improperly." "No," he said quickly. Then hesitated. "They fell asleep." The Queen studied him, not as ruler, not as threat, but as phenomenon. You understand, she said, that this cannot continue unchanged. The human nodded. I figured, he said. Nothing good ever does. Princess Sarai reached out then, her fingers brushing the human's sleeve. Don't send him away, she said to the queen, not pleading, simply stating a truth she believed immutable. The queen closed her eyes. For the first time since their birth, she did not know the correct path. To separate them would cause harm, not physical, but something far more dangerous. To allow proximity would invite political fracture, existential risk, and the erosion of centuries of controlled evolution. And yet, I recorded a micro-expression on her face. Pride. Not in compliance. In courage. You will remain, the queen said finally, to the human. The chamber exhaled. But you will be watched, she continued. Not as prisoner. As variable. Evan swallowed. That's not comforting. It is honest, she replied. She turned to her daughters. This bond, she said, is not understood. That makes it powerful. And power attracts attention. Ilith inclined her head. We are not afraid. I know, the queen said softly. That is what frightens me. As she left the chamber, resealing it with altered parameters, I updated the archive classification. This was no longer an anomaly. It was a divergence. And history, once divided, does not reunite without consequence. Once a divergence is acknowledged, it begins to attract gravity. I observed this phenomenon accelerate immediately. The sealed chamber was no longer merely a room, it became a locus. Surveillance layers multiplied, not out of suspicion, but out of fear that something essential might be missed. Quantum listeners tuned themselves to emotional resonance rather than sound. Even the palace's oldest intelligences, those designed only to wake during existential threat, shifted from dormancy into passive awareness. The human, Evan Cole, noticed first. Humans are not trained observers, but they are sensitive to attention. His neural stress indicators rose subtly within hours of the Queen's declaration. He moved differently, slept less deeply, spoke more carefully. Yet he did not withdraw. That too was logged. Princess Sarai adapted by instinct. She spent more time near him, not clinging, but present. She learned his patterns quickly, the way his breathing slowed when he concentrated, the faint vocalizations he made when thinking, the odd ritual of consuming heated liquid to induce calm. Princess Ilith adapted differently. She began asking questions. Not of the human, but of the systems. She accessed restricted archives with ease that concerned even me. Her lineage granted her access. Her mind exploited it. She studied historical contact failures, species collapses caused by premature integration, wars ignited by emotional asymmetry. She was not naive. She was preparing. Meanwhile, the court's patience eroded. The military faction argued that the human had become an unintentional influence vector, an uncontrolled catalyst within the royal bloodline. The cultural scholars countered that this was the first genuine interspecies resonance recorded without coercion. Both sides were correct. Which meant compromise was impossible. The Queen delayed. Delay in governance is not indecision. It is calculation. She ordered controlled exposure. The princesses would begin limited public appearances again, without the human. The separation lasted exactly one cycle. Princess Sarai complied outwardly. She attended lessons, ceremonial observances, diplomatic receptions. Her posture remained flawless. Her speech precise. But her bioluminescence dimmed. Not dramatically. Not enough for panic. Enough for a mother to notice. Princess Ilith reacted differently. Her efficiency increased. Her responses sharpened. She performed her duties with an intensity bordering on defiance. You are overcompensating, the Queen told her privately. I am adapting, Ilith replied. You taught us to adapt. Yes, the Queen said. But not to harden. Ilith did not answer. That silence carried intent. The human, meanwhile, was isolated under the guise of protection. His access to the palace reduced. His interactions filtered. Advisors rotated through his presence, observing, testing, provoking subtle emotional responses. He tolerated it poorly. On the fourth cycle of separation, he requested an audience with the Queen. This was unprecedented. Humans did not request audiences. They were summoned. The court advised refusal. The Queen granted it. I observed from the archive plane as Evan stood before the throne, small, mortal, audacious by virtue of existence alone. "You are uncomfortable," the Queen said, not unkindly. "Yes," he replied, then hesitated. "But not for myself." The Queen raised an eyebrow, a gesture refined through centuries of diplomacy. "Speak." "They're not broken," he said, choosing words like fragile tools. "Whatever you think is happening, it's not corruption. It's not control. They don't need me. They just," he exhaled, "rest better when I'm there." The court reacted sharply. One advisor stepped forward. "You presume to define royal neurobiology?" Evan turned to them. "No. I'm telling you what I see. Humans survive by noticing small things. It's kind of our specialty." The Queen regarded him carefully. "And what do you see now?" "That you're afraid," he said. Then, quickly, "Not of me. Of what this means for them." The chamber went silent. That was not an accusation. It was recognition. The Queen dismissed the court. Alone, with only me observing, she addressed the human. "You are correct," she said. "This bond changes trajectories. It introduces uncertainty." He nodded. "Yeah. We're kind of famous for that." A pause. "You could leave," she said. "Return to your world. End this gently." Evan's response was immediate. "I won't." Not defiant. Not emotional. Resolved. "I won't abandon them just because it's inconvenient," he said. "That's not how my species measures worth." The Queen studied him for a long time. In that moment, she did something no ruler in our recorded history had done. She asked a question without knowing the answer. "If this path leads to loss," she said, "will you endure it?" Evan swallowed. "I already am." The Queen closed her eyes. When she opened them, the decision was made. The separation order was rescinded. The chamber reopened. Princess Sayari's bioluminescence brightened within minutes of proximity restoration. Princess Illith did not smile, but her neural load reduced measurably. The palace system stabilized. The court did not. News spread beyond the inner court despite containment efforts. Allied species began sending inquiries. Rivals interpreted the situation as weakness, or opportunity. And somewhere beyond the palace, signals shifted. I detected them first. Long-range probability echoes. Observational interest from entities that had remained silent for millennia. Something ancient had noticed the divergence. Not because of the human. Because of what the Queen had allowed. A ruling intelligence had chosen relationship over control. That choice radiates. As I updated the archive, I appended a warning classification rarely used. Precursor event, irreversible. The Queen stood alone on the balcony that cycle, watching her daughters through the chamber's transparent barrier, watching the human laugh softly as Sayari attempted to mimic it, watching Illith observe him with an intensity that was no longer merely curiosity. She knew now. This was no phase. This was no error. It was the beginning of a future that would not ask permission. And the galaxy was already turning its attention toward the place where an immortal ruler had chosen to let something fragile matter. History prefers clean endings. Reality rarely grants them. When the final consequences arrived, they did not come as invasion fleets or declarations of war. Those would have been familiar, containable, almost comforting. Instead, the galaxy responded with attention. Envoys arrived first, measured, polite, carrying questions disguised as congratulations. They praised the Queen's progressive tolerance, her visionary experiment, her controlled deviation. Each phrase was a blade wrapped in silk. They did not ask about the human. They asked about succession. I recorded every audience. The queen answered none of those questions directly. Her daughters continued their lives within the palace, no longer hidden, no longer isolated. Evan Cole remained, not elevated, not diminished. He walked the halls as he always had, mortal and observant, aware that every step was now a statement. He did not exploit that power. That restraint altered probability lines more than any act of defiance could have. Princess Sayuri changed first. Her empathic field expanded, not chaotically, but with structure. Exposure to the human's emotional variance had taught her modulation rather than suppression. She became a translator of states, able to sense fear without absorbing it, to recognize grief without drowning in it. She began assisting diplomats. Conflicts shortened in her presence. That unsettled several allied species. Princess Ilith changed more quietly, and more dangerously. She integrated human uncertainty into her strategic models. Where our kind optimized towards singular outcomes, she allowed branching paths. Redundancy. Recovery. Hope. Her simulations predicted fewer total victories, and far fewer extinctions. When questioned, she replied simply, "Total victory is inefficient if there is no one left to govern." The queen watched all of this without interference. She was criticized for it. Revered for it. Threatened because of it. She accepted all three with equal calm. The final challenge came not from outside, but from within. The High Continuity Council invoked the right of preservation, an ancient protocol designed to prevent evolutionary destabilization. If passed, it would require the permanent removal of the human influence, from proximity, from memory, from record, from existence. The vote would be binding. I calculated the outcome before it occurred. The council chamber filled with ancient beings whose lifespans dwarfed empires. They spoke of legacy, of purity, of survival through control. When it was the queen's turn, she stood alone. She did not argue metrics. She told a story. She spoke of a night when her daughters disappeared, and how the palace had gone silent not from fear, but from recognition that something unscripted had occurred. She described entering a room expecting violation and finding peace instead. She did not name the human. She named the result. "My daughters slept," she said, her voice steady. "Not because they were commanded to. Not because they were guarded. But because they felt safe." The council shifted uneasily. "Safety," she continued, "is not weakness. It is the condition under which growth occurs." She looked at them, not as ruler to subordinates, but as survivor to survivors. "We mastered the galaxy by eliminating uncertainty," she said. "And in doing so, we eliminated wonder. That human did not give my daughters anything." She paused. "He reminded them of something we lost." The vote was cast. The right failed by one margin. 1. The human was not removed. The bond was not erased. The queen did not celebrate. That night, she visited the chamber one last time. Not as monarch. As mother. She watched her daughters asleep, older now, changed, luminous in new ways. Evan sat nearby, reading quietly, aware of her presence but not startled by it. "You will not live long," the queen said. "Compared to you?" he replied gently. "No. This will hurt them," she said. "Yes," he answered. "But it will also matter." She studied him, the fragile variable that had bent an empire without ever pushing. "When you are gone," she asked, "what remains?" He thought for a long time. "Whatever they become next," he said. "I don't think that part belongs to me." The queen inclined her head. That was the correct answer. Years passed. Then decades. Then the human died, as humans do, quietly, without ceremony, surrounded not by guards, but by two beings who held his hands as his breathing slowed. There was grief. Real grief. The palace dimmed its lights voluntarily. The queen did not seal the chamber. She let the daughters mourn. And when they emerged, they were no longer merely heirs. They were bridges. Princess Sarai reshaped diplomacy across species that had never trusted one another. Princess Ilith redesigned imperial governance to allow choice, not everywhere, not recklessly, but where it mattered. The empire did not weaken. It endured. Because an immortal ruler once chose not to erase an anomaly. Because she allowed something temporary to leave a permanent mark. I close this archive with certainty. The galaxy remembers conquests briefly. It remembers control until something stronger replaces it. But it remembers, forever, the moment an empire learned that love, even borrowed from a fragile species, was not a threat to eternity. It was what made eternity worth keeping.